The book that I've chosen today is called The Other Significant Others. It's a very controversial choice of words that Rhaina has chosen, and she says friendship is basically nothing but the lack of sexual desire in a relationship. And that's what this book is about, right? And as you progress, you'll start to realize why she says and what she says. Okay, so this is that time where we close our eyes. Cheating obviously नहीं करेंगे, हम बड़े हो गए हैं सब, कोई watch नहीं कर रहा है, तो cheating नहीं करेंगे. And wherever you feel like you relate with this, just quietly raise your hand. I'm going to start this one. It's 2017. 5 months after moving to Washington, D.C., I walked to the narrow back room of a bar called Lost and Found to celebrate the birthday of my roommate's best friend. Example ऐसा है कि अगर यहाँ पे कोई बहुत छोटी सी चीज़ है, and यहाँ पे आप stories form कर रहे हो, you celebrated the birthday of your best friend, तो अगर किया है life में, तो हाथ उठा दो, उसका ये मेरा मतलब है, ठीक है? तो ऐसे टाइप के छोटे छोटे चीज़ें, ठीक है? So that's what we do, just so that you are also attentive और पता रहे कि यहाँ पे लोगों ने लाइफ में कुछ कुछ एक्सपीरियंस किया हुआ है. Alright, let's continue. The room was an industrial shoebox, its low ceiling, exposed brick wall, and concrete floor trapping the sounds of the crowded space and forcing us all to shout. On the other side of the room was a person who, even from far, I found magnetic. She didn't resemble the other DC young people at the bar on this Wednesday night. Their blazers and button-downs not fitting quite right, like costumes for a performance of adulthood. In her pastel sleeveless blouse and snug pencil skirt, she had the posture of a dancer, if that dancer were also running a boardroom meeting, and expressive gestures. Later, I managed to pull her into a conversation, and I noticed the clear diction and the melody that her voice had. Slightly tipsy, इस पे हाथ उठना चाहिए था सबका. Slightly tipsy, I blurted out what could have been a pickup line. You're a singer, aren't you? She was surprised. She was surprised that I had detected that after only a few sentences of conversation. In fact, she sang a soprano in 2 choirs. Her name was M. Glasses of wine in hand, we talked about my amateur performing arts experience as a kid, how she came from a musical family and got an early start with piano, and voice lessons. Our throats sore from raising our voices over the din of the bar. We left the party after a couple of hours and walked to the metro. During the 4 stops it took to get to our neighborhood, we discovered that we lived only a few blocks away from each other. After exchanging numbers, I left M off at her house and felt giddy as I walked to mine. I quickly discovered that M as a person has no chill, or at least she had no self-consciousness about showing enthusiasm. Soon after we parted that night, I got a voice note from her. I would discover that M's voice notes were the audio equivalent of her emails to friends. Smart and stream of consciousness is all they had. She had an ability to turn observations about the tiniest things into intriguing questions. Between us was a blizzard of ideas, from books and articles we were reading, and details about the important people in our lives, toggling easily between the interpersonal, emotional, and intellectual. 3 days after we met, M invited me to a casual weekly gathering she held at her house that introduced me to what I would come to think of her as extroverted introversion. M often brings friends together, but might also opt to celebrate her birthday by taking herself to a movie alone. At this gathering, she merged the 2 impulses by convening friends to talk over a meal she'd cook for us, and then after lighting a candle, have us curled up in her living room and read our own books in silence. It took us a little time to introduce each other to people and spaces that mattered to both of us together. M became a regular enough presence at my office that she cracked jokes even with my security guard. About a month after we met, M invited me to join her family at an outdoor jazz festival in DC. We dropped by each other's homes with the effortless frequency that before had only seemed possible on sitcoms. We can actually open our eyes now. So far with me, क्या हो रहा है story में, ऐसा लग रहा है she's describing a relationship, like a date, right? And you see what continues to happen. We can keep our eyes open now. It was just a little bit of an exercise to see how this activity goes. We drop by each other's house with the same effortless frequency that before had only seemed possible on sitcoms. It was all a magnificent surprise. I didn't expect to feel the exhilaration I found with M, because it didn't occur to me that those feelings could strike more than once. I met her 2.5 years into a relationship with my now husband, whom I'll call Marco. I felt fortunate to have found a partner so young and assumed that I had made a trade in life. In exchange for finding my partner at 22, I wouldn't get to feel what it's like to fall in love again, unless something went horribly wrong between Marco and me. But there were those same feelings, just shorn of sexual desire with M. In certain ways, M and Marco were similar, analytical, disciplined, and charming. But while Marco was steady, his lows not very low at all, and his highs not off the charts, M had the dial turned up a little bit. She was an easy crier, and she couldn't contain the evidence when her tears evaporated, almost like rings of salt formed under her eyes. She gave such wise advice that therapists I went to disappointed me later. It felt absurd to spend so much time and money talking to people whose insight was inferior to hers. Whereas Marco sought beauty by spending time outdoors, M looked to the stage. The intensity of my friendship with her was without any real precedent. I'd had a best friend in elementary school who moved away. I had another in middle school, and we took acting and singing classes together and had sleepovers most weekends, making Easy Mac and recording goofy videos. I came to feel like a member of her extended family, but after we grew apart in high school, I tended to rely on several close friends, but not a single person, and I've never found someone who made me want to open up as I later would to M. In high school, I struggled to talk about what was going on. That my mom had lost her job during recession, my dad hadn't been working for years, my parents were functionally separated, and the reason my mom stayed at home was because my dad had bought a flat in New Jersey that was unaffordable, and it was unaffordable to move out. I couldn't talk about how despair could overtake my mom and how my dad, who'd been such an adorning father to me, could scare me with his bitterness toward my mom. During my junior year, I became close to a girl named Sophia, who was a grade above me. I shared more with her than with other people, but I still couldn't broach some of my issues at home. Sophia had helped me put a finger on something I wanted, and she had a best friend that she spoke to all the time and could call at any hour. She and her friend were a recognized unit. I approached that kind of connection in graduate school when I made one best friend, Anna, though we later moved into different cities. It's only years later that I met M, whom I eventually became so close that the term best friend seemed inadequate. On New Year's Eve in 2017, M and I co-hosted a party at my house for about a dozen friends, some of whom were passing through town and didn't know the others. Like a poet who enjoys the creative constraints of rhyme scheme, M takes pleasure in devising structured social gatherings. M arranged for our friends to play music and led people through a writing exercise, a series of prompts to reflect the past year and to look forward. She asked us, what vows do we want to renew ourselves? Her vow to herself was to ask for more help. So she said, every time you begin a new project, professional or personal, you should start by asking, who could help me with this? My vow was meant to reduce the alienation I felt at my large office, where I felt reserved, far more removed from my social self by reaching out to a new person each month whom I wanted to know better. To be with M was to be pushed to grow, and I would later see in the element of our friendship mirrored in the account of a couple's romantic relationship. One of the partners on her blog described a core principle in the relationship as mutually assured non-complacency. Through M, I experienced a kind of vitality in friendship that I hadn't had before in my life. I relished it all. I wanted to understand how her mind worked, to mimic the exuberant way she moved through the world. And I felt privy to a secret that it's possible to find the headiness and security that we associate with romantic relationships with a friendship.